Welcome back to Rapture Tales. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and get ready for another story you won't forget. Let's dive back to the story. Eliza's heart woke before the city did, not because she enjoyed mornings, but because dawn was the only hour London felt honest. From a narrow skylight above her bed, a thin wash of blue seeped into her attic flat in Camden, illuminating stacked photography books, neatly labeled hard drives, and a kettle that rattled like it had opinions. She lay still for a moment, listening to the distant rumble of early buses and the whisper of wind against slate roofs. Life had never handed her softness. She had learned to manufacture it in quiet rituals, strong tea, handwritten schedules, shoes polished the night before. At 29, she owned little but owed no one. That mattered. Her phone vibrated across the bedside crate she used as a table. A new email. The subject line alone made her sit upright. Urgent Ashford. Sterling wedding coverage. She stared at it, convinced it had been misdirected. Ashford Global Holdings was the kind of name that hovered over financial headlines and charity galas. People like that hired agencies, not independent photographers who spent weekends documenting street violinists and climate marches. Yet the message was precise. A last-minute change. Discretion required. Exceptional compensation. By mid-morning, she stood outside a mirrored tower in Canary Wharf, feeling briefly like an ink stain on polished marble. Inside, the office's breathed quiet wealth, carpets thick enough to hush doubt, art that refused to explain itself. Oliver Grant, the CFO, greeted her with brisk efficiency. He did not waste smiles. Their original photographer had withdrawn due to a conflict, he explained, and the Ashford family demanded someone unobtrusive, yet capable of capturing authenticity. Eliza's documentary portfolio had surfaced during a private search. She signed a confidentiality agreement longer than some novellas and accepted a temporary security badge. As she turned to leave, Oliver added, almost as an afterthought, "The family values professionalism above all else. You will see much. You will repeat nothing." It was not a threat. It was a principle. Outside again, the cold air felt electric. She had no idea that by accepting the assignment, she had stepped onto a chessboard already mid-game. The morning of the engagement announcement, a precursor event before the grand wedding, unfolded at Ashford House, an estate that seemed less built than inherited from another century. Eliza arrived early, as always, slipping through staff entrances to avoid disrupting the choreography of florists, caterers, and security personnel speaking into cuffs. She preferred invisibility. Invisibility saw everything. Sebastian Wolfe, the wedding planner, floated across the marble foyer, issuing directives with operatic intensity. When he noticed Eliza, his sharp gaze softened slightly. "You're the photographer? Good. Capture elegance, not awkwardness. If anyone looks human, adjust the angle." He swept away before she could reply. She began with architectural shots, sweeping staircases, sunlight pouring through glass ceilings, then drifted toward quieter corners where reality leaked through the polish. A young waiter rehearsing how to pronounce champagne labels, a violinist massaging her wrist, a housekeeper adjusting flowers with maternal care. Then the room shifted. Conversation straightened, shoulders aligned. Theodore Ashford had entered. He was taller than she expected, dressed in a charcoal suit that fit like resolve. Yet what struck her was not authority but fatigue, the subtle heaviness behind his eyes, as though he had been carrying something invisible for too long. People approached him with congratulations that sounded suspiciously like negotiations. Through her lens, she caught a fleeting moment. Theo glancing toward a terrace rather than the guests, his expression briefly unguarded. Not joy, not anticipation. Something closer to resignation. Eliza pressed a shutter. Instinct told her this was the truest photograph she would take all day. That afternoon brought another assignment entirely, one she gave herself. On her way home, she noticed a small crowd gathered beneath Waterloo Bridge. A teenage boy played cello beside the river, the music trembling against the wind. Passers-by slowed without understanding why. Eliza crouched, adjusted exposure, and captured the fragile courage of performing for strangers. "Why photograph me?" the boy asked afterward. "Because you're brave enough to be heard," she replied simply. Moments like these anchored her. Wealth fascinated her less than authenticity. Back in Camden, she uploaded the day's images. When Theo's photograph appeared on her monitor, she paused. There was again that fraction of a second where power fell away and something deeply human surfaced. She enlarged the image, studying it with professional curiosity. He looked like a man standing at the edge of a decision he had not made. Without knowing why, she saved a private copy. Across the city, Theo dismissed the final guests and escaped onto the estate's rear gardens. Night carried the scent of wet earth. From his coat pocket, he withdrew a compact camera, matte black, unbranded. Few knew about this habit. Photography stripped the world down to composition and light. It asked nothing of him except presence. He framed the moon through skeletal branches. Still hiding behind that thing, a voice called gently. Eleanor Ashford approached, posture immaculate even outdoors. She studied her son the way a general studies terrain. "You should be celebrating," she said. "I am," he answered, though neither believed it. Victoria is an extraordinary match. The alliance will stabilize the next decade. There was the language of mergers applied to marriage. Theo lowered the camera. "Did you ever love father before you married him?" Eleanor did not flinch. Love grows where commitment is planted. It was not an answer. It was a philosophy. As she turned to leave, her gaze sharpened. The photographer today, the woman with observant eyes. She noticed things others didn't. Theo frowned slightly. "Is that a concern?" "On the contrary," Eleanor murmured. "Sometimes an outsider sees a path when those inside are too accustomed to walls." He watched her disappear into the house, unsettled by the hint of strategy in her tone. For the first time, Eliza Hart existed somewhere on Eleanor Ashford's mental map. The next week delivered motion without warning. Eliza's work from the engagement circulated quietly among Ashford executives, praised for its restraint and emotional clarity. She received confirmation that she would photograph the wedding itself at the Eco Hotel, one of London's most architecturally daring luxury venues overlooking the Thames. The fee alone could secure her financial breathing room for a year. Margaret Vale insisted they celebrate with takeaway curry eaten cross-legged on the floor. "You realize," Margaret said, peering over her glasses, "that proximity to power changes people." "It won't change me," Eliza replied. Margaret smiled softly. "No, but it may reveal you." Meanwhile, Daniel Hart, a financial journalist with a reputation for dismantling empires, studied a separate set of documents under dim newsroom lights. Patterns threaded through sterling acquisitions, sudden regulatory approvals, silent partners, vanished competitors. Nothing provable, yet unmistakably deliberate. One photograph in a society column caught his attention. Theo Ashford beside Victoria Sterling, both immaculate, both unreadable. "Corporate marriages," he muttered, "always about territory." He did not yet know that a freelance photographer had unintentionally begun documenting the edges of the same story. 2 days before the wedding, Eliza conducted a venue walkthrough. The Eco Hotel shimmered in glass and steel, its grand ballroom suspended above the river like a lantern. Workers rehearsed lighting sequences. Chefs debated plating geometry. Luxury, she observed, was largely a matter of orchestration. On an upper terrace, she noticed Theo again, alone, aiming his camera toward the skyline. "You're blocking my composition," he said without turning. "Occupational hazard," she replied. He glanced back, surprised not by her presence but by her composure. Most people performed around him. She did not. "You photographed the terrace at Ashford House," he added. "You look like you needed air." A corner of his mouth lifted, not quite a smile, but close enough to register as relief. They spoke briefly about lenses, about how cities transform before sunrise. No pleasantries, no hierarchy. When she excused herself, Theo found his mood unexpectedly lighter. For the first time in months, someone had addressed him without calculating advantage. Elsewhere in the hotel, Victoria Sterling supervised seating charts with surgical precision. Every placement reflected leverage. Politicians near donors, rivals separated by charm. When an assistant mentioned the freelance photographer, Victoria's expression barely shifted. "Ensure she understands discretion," she said. Control, after all, was her native language. Richard Sterling arrived soon after. surveying the ballroom like a general evaluating a battlefield he already owned. "Once this marriage is formalized," he told Victoria quietly, "Ashford resistance will dissolve within the quarter. And Theo, he will adapt," Richard replied. Men always do when structure leaves them no alternative. Neither noticed Eleanor observing from across the hall. Her reflection fractured elegantly in mirrored panels. War, she understood, often wore the costume of celebration. The evening before the ceremony, rain polished London into reflections. Eliza packed her equipment with methodical care. Backups for her backups, batteries aligned like disciplined soldiers. Opportunity favored preparation. She had learned that early. As she zipped the final case, an unfamiliar sensation surfaced, anticipation edged with unease. Large events carried emotional weather their own, and something about this wedding felt charged, as though the air itself awaited instruction. Across the river, Theo stood at his penthouse window watching storm clouds scatter. Tomorrow would bind his future publicly and irrevocably. Yet instead of thinking about vows, he found himself recalling a photographer who spoke to him as if titles were irrelevant. He wondered, briefly, what it might feel like to choose a life rather than inherit one. Sleep came slowly to them both, two strangers orbiting the same approaching moment, unaware that within hours a single whispered sentence would fracture every careful plan. And the wedding had not even begun. Rain washed the city clean by morning, leaving behind a sharp brightness that made every surface gleam as if freshly revealed. Eliza arrived at the Eco Hotel before sunrise, rolling her equipment cases across the polished floor, while the last of the night staff drifted out. The ballroom was half transformed. Towering arrangement of ivory orchids waited in cool storage. Technicians tested lighting grids that mimicked daylight, and somewhere distant a piano was being tuned note by careful note. The scale of it all might have intimidated another photographer, but Eliza felt something steadier take hold inside her. She did not belong to this world, yet her job was not to belong. It was to witness. Sebastian Wolf appeared almost instantly, wrapped in a tailor coat that seemed immune to wrinkles. "Timing is everything today," he said, handing her a revised schedule. "The ceremony begins at precisely noon. The press will remain outside. Inside, only curated reality exists." He paused, lowering his voice. "You'll notice increased security. Certain families prefer their negotiations disguised as celebrations." Eliza nodded, storing the remark away without comment. She moved through the ballroom, capturing pre-ceremony stillness. Chairs aligned with mathematical precision. Crystal catching early light. Staff gliding silently like stagehands before a performance. Yet beneath the orchestration, she sensed tension. Conversation stopped when she passed. Assistants whispered into headsets with clipped urgency. Something about this wedding felt less like romance and more like the signing of a treaty on an upper level. She found Eleanor Ashford standing alone at the window, gazing toward the river where thin fog drifted over the water. "You're earlier than expected," Eleanor observed without turning. "So is the sunlight," Eliza replied. That earned the faintest smile. Eleanor studied her properly then, eyes sharp with intelligence. "You see compositions others overlook. That is a rare discipline. Today, observe everything, even what seems irrelevant." The statement was too deliberate to be casual. Before Eliza could respond, Eleanor added quietly, "Moments decide futures. Don't miss them." Theo spent the morning surrounded yet profoundly alone. Taylor's adjusted his cuffs twice, though they were already perfect. Oliver reviewed talking points about the merger disguised within congratulatory remarks. Arthur Bennett handed him a folder containing documents he would not read today, but was expected to sign soon after the honeymoon announcement. "You look like a man attending his own acquisition," Oliver muttered when they finally stood apart from the others. "Is it that obvious?" "Only to those who know you." Theo exhaled slowly. "Tell me honestly, once this alliance finalizes, how much autonomy remains?" Oliver hesitated just long enough to confirm the answer. "Less than you deserve." Before Theo could reply, Lydia Ashford swept in with theatrical affection, adjusting his lapel for photographers who were not yet present. "Cheer up, cousin. Most people would kill for this level of attention." He met her gaze calmly. "Most people would also prefer choice." Lydia's smile lingered a fraction too long, warm on the surface, unreadable beneath. Across the suite, Victoria Sterling entered wearing a robe the color of frost, her posture already camera-ready. "Theo," she said, offering a measured kiss to his cheek. "Today will be flawless." Flawless, he thought, was often another word for irreversible. Guests began arriving late morning, financiers, diplomats, cultural figures, each stepping from black cars into a choreography of greetings. Eliza moved among them with fluid discretion, capturing gestures rather than poses. A handshake held half a second too long, a rival smile sharpened at the edges. Eleanor greeting Richard Sterling with impeccable composure that revealed nothing of her thoughts. Daniel Hart lingered near the outer perimeter, officially present as a guest of a media executive, yet unmistakably working even when still. He recognized patterns where others saw pageantry. When he noticed Eliza photographing a quiet exchange between two board members, curiosity flickered. "You shoot like an investigator," he said lightly when their paths crossed. "I shoot what exists," she replied. "Be careful. Truth has a way of charging interest." She almost laughed, almost, but his gaze carried seriousness beneath the charm. He handed her a card. "If you ever capture something that looks too significant to ignore, call me." She slipped the card into her pocket, without promising anything. Minutes before the ceremony, Theo escaped onto a narrow service balcony rarely used by guests. The river stretched wide below, gray-green and indifferent to human arrangements. He lifted his small camera, framing the horizon, when the door opened softly behind him. Eliza stepped out, intending only to check the light. For a moment, they simply regarded one another, two professionals hiding in plain sight. "Nervous?" she asked. "No," he answered after a beat. "Resigned." She considered that. Resignation photographs differently than joy. People notice, even if they don't understand why. "Do you always speak this plainly?" "Only when it feels necessary." He studied her, struck again by the absence of calculation. "If you could walk away from an entire life designed for you, would you?" "I did," she said quietly. "It's terrifying." "And worth it." Before he could respond, music swelled inside. The signal. Reality awaited. The ballroom transformed as guests rose. Victoria advanced down the aisle with sovereign grace, every movement measured. Theo stood opposite, composed yet distant, as if observing himself from elsewhere. Vows were about to begin when a subtle disturbance rippled near the rear entrance. Eleanor had noticed it first. Richard Sterling speaking urgently with legal aid, a folder changing hands to discreetly for coincidence. Her instincts sharpened. Something was accelerating ahead of schedule. Then Lydia approached her, voice honeyed. "Aren't they magnificent together? By tonight, the families will be inseparable." The phrasing tightened Eleanor's chest. Not united, inseparable. Her gaze shifted toward Theo. For the first time since his childhood, she saw not an heir but a son standing on the edge of confinement. Decision arrived without ceremony. She turned, scanning the room until she found Eliza adjusting a lens near the side aisle. Eleanor crossed the distance swiftly yet without attracting attention. When she reached her, she leaned close, so close that her perfume barely stirred the air, and whispered a sentence that would fracture the day. "Pretend you're my son's fiancée." Eliza blinked, certain she had misheard. "I beg your pardon?" "There is no time," Eleanor murmured. "If this marriage proceeds, my son loses control of his company within months. I need interruption, credibility, now. You are intelligent, composed, and most importantly, unexpected." Shock thundered through Eliza, yet Eleanor's eyes held neither panic nor madness, only ruthless clarity. "I'm a photographer," Eliza whispered. "Today," Eleanor replied, already unclasping a velvet case. "You are whatever saves him." Inside lay a necklace of family diamonds, alive with cold fire. "Walk forward when I signal. Take his hand. Look like a woman claiming what is already hers." Music continued. Guests watched the aisle. History balanced on seconds. Eliza set her camera down. The interruption landed like lightning without thunder. Silent at first, incomprehensible, then undeniable. As the officiant prepared to speak, Eleanor rose gracefully. "Forgive me," she announced, her voice carrying with effortless authority. "Before we continue, There appears to be a misunderstanding regarding my son's prior commitment. Murmurs spread. Eliza stepped forward on unsteady legs that somehow found rhythm. The emerald silk jumpsuit Eleanor had insisted a stylist keep for contingencies fit as though tailored overnight. Diamonds rested against her collarbone, impossibly heavy. Theo turned, confusion flashing into astonishment as she reached him. "Trust me," her eyes seemed to say, though neither understood why he did. She took his hand. Gasps fractured the room. Victoria did not gasp. She watched, calculating, furious beneath composure. Richard Sterling rose slowly, the temperature of the entire ballroom dropping with the movement. "This is absurd," he said. Eleanor met his gaze. "On the contrary, my son intends to honor the woman he loves." The lie rang with such conviction that even Theo felt its gravity. "What is your name?" Richard demanded. "Eliza Hart," she answered, voice steadier than her pulse. "A photographer," Lydia added sweetly from her seat. The word detonated. Phones appeared. Whispers sharpened. Victoria stepped forward at last, her calm now glacial. "Theo, explain." He looked at Eliza, really looked, and in that instant recognized something extraordinary. She was terrified, yet she had stepped into the storm anyway. So he made a choice. "My mother is correct," he said quietly. "This wedding cannot proceed." Chaos followed. News travels fastest when scandal carries it. Within minutes, gossip sites erupted. Billionaire wedding halted, mystery fiancé appears. Someone had already uncovered Eliza's profession. Another labeled her an opportunist. Cameras gathered outside, like birds scenting weather. Oliver intercepted them near a private corridor. "Cars are compromised. Too many reporters." "Then we don't use cars," Eleanor replied. Arthur Bennett appeared as if conjured, guiding them through service passages until they reached an unmarked exit, where a single vehicle waited. Only once the city swallowed them did silence fall inside the car. Theo spoke first. "You risked everything for someone you don't know." Eliza let out a breath she felt she'd been holding for hours. "Your mother asked, and something about your face said you needed rescue." He almost laughed, the sound edged with disbelief. Eleanor watched them both, a strategist already recalculating the board. This is no longer merely about a wedding. Richard Sterling will retaliate, as if summoned by the prediction. Theo's phone vibrated nonstop. Board members, investors, headlines spiraling outward. The driver turned toward a discreet townhouse used for sensitive negotiations. A safe house, though none used the word aloud. Night deepened around the townhouse, its windows darkened for privacy. Inside, exhaustion replaced adrenaline. Eliza finally removed the diamonds, placing them carefully on a table as though they might still explode. "I should leave," she said. "You can't," Oliver replied gently. "Not yet. The narrative binds you to us. Separation now invites worse speculation." Theo poured 2 glasses of water, handing her one. "You didn't have to do that." "I know. Are you regretting it?" She considered, surprisingly, and shook her head. "No, just recalibrating my understanding of a normal workday." A faint smile passed between them. Later, unable to sleep, Theo noticed a camera bag partially open. Inside were images from earlier, including one he had taken anonymously a month ago at dawn, now printed in a small exhibition catalog. "You appreciate that photographer?" he asked quietly. Eliza followed his gaze and smiled. "He captures loneliness without making it look tragic. Only honest." Theo hesitated, then admitted, "It's mine. I shoot under another name." Recognition lit her expression, not of his status, but of his hidden self. In that quiet exchange, something shifted from pretense toward understanding. Outside, however, engines slowed briefly before moving on, watchers confirming location. The corporate war had begun its advance. The townhouse woke slowly, as if uncertain it was safe to breathe. Pale morning light filtered through security blinds, striping the hardwood floors in quiet geometry. Eliza had slept barely 2 hours on a sofa that was too elegant to be comfortable, her mind replaying the moment she had taken Theo's hand. Every version of the memory felt unreal. The music stopping, the shock, the weight of diamonds against her skin. She rose carefully, aware that her life before yesterday already felt distant, like a photograph fading at the edges. In the kitchen, Eleanor Ashford stood perfectly composed, reading financial updates on a tablet, while tea steamed untouched beside her. "You handled yourself with remarkable discipline," Eleanor said without looking up. "I impersonated someone I'm not in front of half the financial world," Eliza replied. "I'm not sure discipline is the word." Eleanor set the tablet down then, studying her with something that almost resembled respect. Courage rarely announces itself politely. You step forward when hesitation would have been easier. Theo entered moments later, tie discarded, sleeves rolled. Less CEO now, more man recovering from impact. He paused when he saw them together, as if reassured by the simple fact that Eliza had not vanished overnight. "We need to discuss the narrative," Oliver said briskly as he joined them. "Sterling-controlled outlets are already suggesting manipulation, that Eliza staged this for access." Eliza felt the accusation like a physical chill. Theo's voice hardened. "Then we counter before rumor becomes record." Arthur Bennett arrived with documents outlining a temporary public statement. Theo and Eliza had maintained a private relationship for months, choosing discretion until circumstances forced transparency. It was legally survivable, but it required proximity. "You would need to appear together," Arthur explained. "Consistency persuades faster than truth." Eliza met Theo's gaze. "Are you asking me to continue pretending?" Theo answered without hesitation. "I'm asking for time, until I dismantle what Sterling is building." She exhaled slowly, sensing the invisible threshold again. "Then we do it properly," she said. "No half measures." Across the table, Eleanor allowed herself the smallest nod. A partnership, fabricated or not, had just been forged. By midday, the storm had escalated exactly as predicted. Financial channels speculated about leadership instability at Ashford Global. Anonymous sources hinted at emotional decision-making. Victoria Sterling issued a statement expressing measured disappointment, her restraint far more damaging than anger would have been. Daniel Hart called within the hour. "You've detonated London," he said when Eliza answered. "I didn't detonate anything. Perhaps not intentionally. But listen carefully. Sterling never loses quietly. If he's silent, he's arranging something." That afternoon, Theo insisted Eliza relocate temporarily to his penthouse for security. The building overlooked the Thames, all glass planes and quiet wealth. She resisted at first. The scale of it felt disorienting, but logic prevailed. "You shouldn't be alone right now," he said simply. Inside, she noticed contradiction immediately. Minimalist design softened by unexpected warmth, shelves of photography monographs, a piano, prints of early morning streets. "You actually live here," she murmured. "Contrary to rumor, yes." He hesitated, then added, "There's something else you should know. My board is convening an emergency session tomorrow. Sterling will try to frame the wedding incident as proof I'm unfit." "Are you?" The question surprised him and then steadied him. "No," he said, "but perception is currency." That night, unable to rest, Eliza wandered onto the terrace. The river moved with patient certainty below. Theo joined her, camera in hand. "You shoot when you can't solve something," she observed. "And you?" "I shoot when I need to understand it." He studied her profile against the city lights. "You walked into chaos for me." "Why?" She considered before answering. "Because your face looked like someone closing a door on himself. I couldn't pretend not to see it." For the first time since childhood, Theo felt the unfamiliar sensation of being protected. The next morning's boardroom gleamed with intimidating neutrality. Smoked glass, steel, silence engineered to magnify every word. Directors assembled with the politeness of people preparing for conflict. Richard Sterling attended remotely, his expression carved from patience. "I question whether emotional volatility now threatens shareholder confidence." He began smoothly. Theo let the accusation settle before responding. "What threatens this company is coercion disguised as partnership." A murmur rippled. Oliver projected documents revealing accelerated merger clauses Sterling had attempted to bury within ceremonial paperwork. Sterling smiled faintly. "Standard protections." Arthur Bennett spoke then, voice calm as snowfall. Protections typically disclosed before vows. The vote that followed did not end the threat, but it stalled Sterling's immediate advance. As the meeting adjourned, Lydia approached Theo quietly. "You've made a dangerous enemy," she said. "I already had one." Her smile held something unreadable again. From the observation gallery above, present as part of the relationship optics, Eliza realized corporate war resembled choreography as intricate as any wedding, and far less forgiving. Days passed in controlled visibility. Theo and Eliza attended a charity exhibition together, cameras flashing as they arrived. Their ease looked convincing enough that headlines softened from scandal to fascination. Inside the gallery, she found herself relaxing for the first time since the wedding, until Victoria appeared. She wore composure like armor. "You're adjusting quickly," Victoria said. "I adapt when necessary." Victoria's gaze cooled. "Do be careful. Worlds like this admire novelty briefly, then erase it." Theo stepped beside Eliza before she could respond. "Victoria," he said evenly. She regarded them both, then smiled, a gesture devoid of warmth. "Wars are rarely won in ballrooms, Theo. Remember that." As she walked away, Eliza sensed the encounter had not been social at all. It had been reconnaissance. Late one evening, while reviewing her wedding files for contractual delivery, Eliza noticed something she had missed, a sequence captured unintentionally while adjusting focus near a side corridor. Richard Sterling stood with a regulatory official who was not supposed to be present. An envelope changed hands. The official's expression suggested reluctant acceptance. Her pulse quickened. She enlarged the frame. Then another, and another, timestamps forming a pattern that aligned with Daniel Hart's suspicions. When Theo returned from a call, she turned the screen toward him. "This looks like bribery," she said quietly. His jaw tightened as he studied the images. "If this is authenticated." "It's not gossip," she finished. "It's leverage." Within hours, Daniel joined them, astonishment barely contained. "These are prosecutable," he said, "but releasing them improperly could trigger retaliation before authorities act." Eleanor listened from across the room, pride flickering behind strategy. "Then we do nothing prematurely. Evidence is power only when timed correctly." Theo looked at Eliza, truly looked, seeing now that her presence was no accident in his life, but a turning point. "You didn't just interrupt a wedding," he said softly. "You may have saved my company." She met his gaze, something warmer unfolding between them. No longer pretense, not yet confessed. Outside the penthouse windows, storm clouds gathered again, reflecting faintly in the glass like a warning, because men like Richard Sterling did not wait passively for exposure. And somewhere else in the city, Lydia Ashford closed her phone after a quiet conversation and whispered to the empty room. Soon, the war was no longer approaching. It had arrived. Sleep abandoned Theo long. Before dawn, he stood barefoot in the quiet of the penthouse, watching low fog drift over the Thames like something alive and calculating. London looked deceptively peaceful from above, its bridges glowing softly, its streets not yet awake enough to carry rumor. But beneath that calm, pressure was building, financial pressure, social pressure, something darker that moved without headlines. On the dining table lay printed copies of Eliza's photographs, each image a silent accusation. He had studied them for hours, not because he doubted their authenticity, but because he understood exactly what they represented: the difference between surviving Sterling and ending him. Behind him, Eliza stepped into the room, her hair loosely gathered, wrapped in one of the spare robes the housekeeper had provided. She noticed the photographs immediately. "You haven't slept." "Leaders rarely do during sieges," he replied. She walked closer, examining the images again. Every time she saw the envelope pass between Sterling and the official, her stomach tightened. She had spent her career capturing truth without interfering in it. Now truth demanded involvement. "What happens if we release them?" she asked. Theo folded his arms, thinking not like a victim but like a strategist. "Sterling accelerates. He'll attempt to discredit you first, destroy the source before the evidence matures." As if summoned by the prediction, Oliver called seconds later. "It's begun," he said without greeting. "Financial blogs are questioning Eliza's professional history. Anonymous claim she fabricated proximity to you. Sterling is poisoning the well. Eliza absorbed the words in silence, but Theo saw the flicker of hurt she tried to hide. They're not questioning her, Theo said quietly. They're declaring war on me. From the far end of the room, Eleanor watched them both, her expression sharpened by something older than anger. Maternal resolve hardened into strategy. Then we stop reacting, she said, and start cornering. None of them yet realized the most dangerous move had already been set into motion from inside the family itself. The attack widened by afternoon. A tabloid released a feature implying Eliza had manipulated vulnerable elites for career gain. Old clients were contacted. Her foster history, once simply a private chapter of survival, was reframed as opportunism. Margaret Vale called, voice trembling with protective fury. You come home if this becomes unbearable, she insisted. I won't run, Eliza replied gently. Not this time. When she ended the call, Theo was watching her with unmistakable admiration. You're stronger than most executives, I know. I had excellent training, she said. Life tends to provide it whether you apply or not. Before he could answer, Arthur Bennett arrived with new intelligence. A vote is being quietly organized among minority board members to challenge Theo's leadership. The complaint cites personal instability. The language mirrors Sterling's attorneys. Who's coordinating it? Theo asked. Arthur hesitated, rare for him. We traced the communications. A pause settled heavily. Lydia Ashford. The name landed like breaking glass. Theo leaned back slowly, disbelief giving way to cold comprehension. Lydia's carefully timed smiles, her constant presence near sensitive conversations, her subtle encouragement of the Sterling alliance. Why? Eliza asked. Resentment is often more durable than greed, Eleanor said softly. She was raised adjacent to power, never inside it. Theo closed his eyes briefly, grief flickering beneath control. Betrayal from rivals was expected. Betrayal from blood rearranged something deeper. But grief lasted only a moment. Then the CEO returned. Prepare the board, he said. If Lydia wants a contest, she'll have one. That evening, Daniel Hart joined them with legal analysts who confirmed the photographs exceeded journalistic value. They were admissible evidence, yet timing remained critical. We released them during the board challenge. Daniel advised, maximum impact, minimum recovery time for Sterling. Eliza listened, struck by how far she had traveled from her quiet attic. Once, her greatest professional worry had been lighting conditions. Now she sat inside a strategy that could topple one of Europe's most feared businessmen. Later, after the others departed, she stepped onto the terrace again. Theo followed, carrying 2 untouched glasses of wine more for ritual than thirst. Are you afraid? He asked. Yes, she answered, but not of losing reputation. I'm afraid of becoming someone hardened by this world. He considered that carefully. You haven't hardened, he said. You've clarified it. She studied him, the man beneath the inheritance, and realized something with startling certainty. Somewhere between the wedding and the war, she had stopped pretending entirely. You once asked if I would walk away from a life designed for me, he said quietly. Meeting you made me realize I already have. The silence that followed was not empty. It was charged. He reached for her hand, slowly, giving her time to refuse. She didn't. What began as strategy had crossed invisibly into truth, and for the first time since the interruption, the future felt less like a trap and more like a choice. The boardroom filled faster than usual on the morning of the vote. Rumors had drawn observers, legal teams, silent investors calculating trajectories. Lydia sat poised near the far end of the table, immaculate in navy, her expression composed enough to pass for innocence. When Theo entered with Eliza beside him, whispers traveled instantly. Lydia's gaze flicked toward them, faint amusement surfacing. She believed momentum favored her. Arthur called the session to order. Lydia spoke first, her tone regretful but sharpened beneath. Recent events suggest leadership influenced by emotional entanglements. For protection of shareholder value, I propose temporary executive review. Several directors nodded, not loyal to Lydia, merely loyal to stability.